Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. I know you're very excited to hear from me. I'm excited to be here. Got a lot to talk about. Obviously, you know, I'm riveted. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of Bashir's book. He announced today he's putting out a book called Go and Do Likewise, How We Heal a Broken Country. And that's going right to the top of my list. I'm like you guys, now hearing this, you've stopped listening to me. You've rushed over to Amazon. You've put it on your pre-order list. You're going to have to wait a little while. It's scheduled for release on September 22nd, 2026. So, you know, you'll have to wait for your book in the mail, but, you know, good timing, of course, might be about the same time as you ramp up to run for president, of course, and we'll be digging into exactly what that book is supposed to be about. It's supposedly about Bashir's Christian faith, and he was recently on The View. I know a lot of you have heard about that, so we'll tap into that a little bit and continue to discuss just how much this is going to cost the taxpayer, because as we've discovered through the auditor's report on spending, KSP is spending quite a bit of money providing security to Bashir, well over $200,000, with having to purchase food and stays at places where quite clearly Bashir is not traveling for official business. So that means, on top of this book release, well, the taxpayer will be, of course, paying for the security at this book tour. I'm very excited about that. That is my tax dollars going to very helpful things. So we'll discuss that. Also, we have breaking news in the driver's license scandal. For those of you unaware, nearly 2,000 driver's licenses were revoked from people after a illegal immigrant bribery scandal going on, where illegal immigrants were paying hundreds of dollars in order to get fake driver's licenses from the driver's license office, with temp workers, state workers, bunch of people involved. 5 people have been indicted on that. That happened yesterday. So we'll be digging into that. And then finally, something we'll be discussing will be this House Bill 500. There was a statewide email sent out to school staff, to state workers from the official letterhead out of the personnel cabinet, alerting people to this House Bill 500 that is being considered to deal with the Kentucky's health plan. Basically, the plan for state employees, their health insurance premiums, talking about very scary email warning them it will go up. It will go up. You're going to have to be worried about it. So we'll be digging into that, what's really going on here. And truthfully, the legislature's caught between a rock and a hard place on this one. It's definitely a difficult situation. So we'll have all that and more today on Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you like what you're hearing here, you want to learn more about what I talk about, you can visit theandrewshow.com. Outside of just being on Kentucky's Voice on Wednesdays, I have the Andrew Cooperrider Show. That's right here on WGTK, Sundays at 6, also on WBNA 21, Wednesdays at 11. And you can also check out all the other places where you can catch that show by visiting theandrewshow.com. Now, I know as I dig through this, a lot of you will be wanting to sound off. You'll want to get in your opinions. And as always, I deal with those texts there in that final segment. But throughout, text in, and then I'll read your text out on air and respond to them. Go ahead and text 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. That's the Kentucky Voice text line, where you can get in your opinions, how you feel I'll read them off. I'll respond to them as long as they're nice, though. If they're nice, especially if they're compliments, those will get read first. I'll make sure I hit those. But then actual opinions ones as well, I will read off and respond to. So we've got a big show planned for you. Bashir's book, very excited about that. That's sarcasm, in case you didn't realize that. But very excited about it. The driver's license scandal, and also this House Bill 500 dealing with the Kentucky Employee Health Plan. It's a lot of concern over the legislature wanting to put a 5% cap on additional spending, and they're not happy about it. So we'll have that when we get back here in just a short minute on Kentucky's Voice. Andrew Cooperrider will be back with you soon.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. Sir Andrew Cooperrider, as the Chiron currently says. In the break, I revealed that I'm actually a Lord of Scotland. You too could be a Lord of Scotland if you send $50 to the right place. They sell you a 1 by 1 square foot of land on some estate, and you get registered as a Lord of Scotland. Very exciting stuff. So that is Sir Andrew Cooperrider is my official title in the English courts, but for you guys can just call me Andrew Cooperrider. That's fine. Anyway, so Andy Bashir, not a sir, just to make that point, doesn't own a square foot of land in Scotland like I do. However, Andy Bashir, he put out a new book called Go and Do Likewise, How We Heal a Broken Country. It's actually not set to be released till September 22nd. However, according to Grok, very good source here, Grok, they say the book is a memoir reflection centered on Bashir's Christian faith and how it has shaped his personal life, family, and political leadership as governor of a deep red state like Kentucky. It emphasizes reclaiming faith as a positive force for good and public life, rooted in compassion, kindness, and helping others. What's interesting about that first claim off the bat, and I always find this as just a really fascinating hypocrisy on the left. You see all the time, if you reference the fact you're a Christian and you maybe support certain pieces of legislation or don't support certain pieces of legislation because of your faith, they will say there should be a separation of church and state. Recently, the legislature last year passed a resolution to reinstate the Ten Commandment monument onto its place on the state grounds. It was removed in the 90s for some sort of construction and then never put back. And so they had it put back by order of the legislature. And, Bashir, he didn't make an announcement about it. He didn't celebrate it at all. And of course, his far leftist cronies went on to all the posts about it to claim that there's a separation of church and state, that putting the Ten Commandments up is violating the First Amendment. Well, first off, there is no separation of church and state within the Constitution. Understand that. That is from the Federalist Papers. But what's important to understand about freedom of religion means the government cannot force you to participate in any religion. But that doesn't stop them themselves from honoring the Christian faith. I mean, they pray on both the federal level and the state levels. They pray before every session. Our money, of course, says, "In God we trust." There's all kind our rights. The entire basis of our Bill of Rights is that we have rights endowed to us by our Creator. Belief in a higher power is intertwined within our government, whether you like it or not. And that's not by accident. It's not like our founders thought, okay, it's going to be a completely agnostic government. But regardless, it's not okay when people on the right use something like faith as a way to go ahead and, push a certain ideology maybe, or as an excuse for why they voted one way or another. And I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, you vote for a person because of their moral values. But when you have a far leftist like Bashir invoking faith to excuse his political actions, even when it's a complete demonization of the scripture, to say the least, a misread, his beliefs, you would say, would be on the high side. At best, you could say he's just ignoring whole parts of the Bible when he claims this. But, some people, including me, may describe his talking points as blasphemous. And even more so as you're putting them into a book. He's, that's his faith, though. But it's interesting how they give a pass on this. They applaud this. In fact, on The View, he was recently on, you probably saw this, where he's using his faith to excuse how allowing transgender surgeries and irreversible chemical castration drugs and hormone blockers for children. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
But we rarely talk about the why. People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms. I said my faith teaches me that all children are children of God. And I didn't want people picking on those kids.
100% agree on that.
So there you go. There's Andy Bashir talking about his faith and how it informs his decisions when it comes to things like transgender surgery for kids or those kinds of things. And I think it's worth mentioning, anytime you're invoking your faith and the people who respond to that like a bunch of clapping seals are godless heathens, what you said is probably not in the scripture anywhere. It's probably something you've misread and made up yourself to make it work to what you already politically believe. And obviously, he's ignoring whole parts of the Bible, and he's the one who brought up faith. I normally on the show don't bring faith too much into it. I like to make political arguments based simply upon political truths and facts. Now, those truths and facts are obviously reflected in the scriptures, but Bashir brought it up. He brought up his faith, and he used it as an excuse for vetoing a piece of legislation that said you cannot do irreversible harm to kids in the name of gender ideology. You can't perform surgeries that cut the genitalia off kids. You can't cut their breasts off. You can't give them chemical castration drugs, the same drugs we give to pedophiles in order to stop them from raping kids. They're giving that to children as a part of this gender transitioning. And you can't give them hormone treatments. This is all harmful and damaging to children. And the Bible's pretty clear about what happens to people who cause children to sin. Matthew 18:6, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it'd be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. Here's Psalms 127, 3-5. Behold, children are heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. So, and that's just a piece of scripture. Like, if you search for scripture about harming children, you're going to find probably 25, 30, 40 verses about it. The Bible's pretty emphatic that you're not to harm children. Specifically, you're not to cause them to sin. Unless you believe the LGBTQ ideology is not sin, I mean, you can go through it. Jude 1:7, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, served as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. And at least you say, well, that's the Old Testament. Here's a New Testament for you, 1 Corinthians 6:9-10. Or do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, neither the sexually immoral, nor adulterers, nor idolaters, nor men who practice homosexuality, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor revelers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. At least you need more. 10:6-9. From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Therefore, man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. And, of course, Deuteronomy 22:5, a woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wears women's clothing, for the Lord your God detests anyone who does this. So needless to say, a lot of scripture there, but the Bible's pretty clear here that homosexuality is wrong, that it's a sin, that transgenderism is a sin. It's not in line with biblical teachings. And those who cause children to sin are some of the people who, according to the Bible, deserve to be punished the harshest. So needless to say, Bashir's entire idea of twisting the scripture to defend vetoing the type of legislation that protects children is clearly blasphemous and clearly a twisting of the faith. And we can expect more of that in this book tour he has coming up. Because, of course, that's what it's about. How I can use my Christian faith to bring about the kinds of political beliefs I believe in. He's literally trying to battle back against the idea because, Christianity as a whole has been greatly held by Republicans. Republicans pray before their party functions. Democrats typically don't. That's just the facts. Republicans often invoke God when they're talking. That's just a fact. But yet, he believes that what the Democrats need to do in his presidential pitch will be reclaiming Christianity for the Democrats, something that fits them about as well as a size 15 boot fits a size 6 foot. It's just too big for them. They can't wear it well. They're going to slip right out of it because it's just not who they are. But that's not the only thing I have to say about this book tour because it's quite clear. We'll be paying for this book tour like we paid for many things. Bashir's just in New York, for an example, filming Sirius XM. It looks like KSP's providing security everywhere he goes. We'll be discussing that when we get back. Maybe you have comments, maybe you have opinions. You can shoot that in. Text 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. That's our text line. We'll be back here in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. Your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. Make sure, if you want to join into the conversation and shoot us over a text with your comments, you can shoot us a text at 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. So, as mentioned, Bashir's got this book. And what comes with books? Well, book tours, of course. That's the reason why they release books. Nobody actually was clamoring for an Andy Bashir book. There's nobody sitting out there that says, you know what? I want several hundred pages of Bashir's thoughts written out onto paper. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just like 10 pages of thoughts and then the rest is a coloring book. I don't know if it's like, write your thoughts here, and then it's actually you writing your thoughts, because he doesn't have much going on. I mean, if you hear him talk all the times, it's like a folksy Mr. Rogers with no insightful, in-depth thoughts at all. Trust me, I sometimes, because I have to, not because I want to, will listen to clips and watch parts of his podcast. There is nothing going on up there in that head. Nothing. There's no insights at all. He is a political machine, simply. But he's doing this presidential tour. That's why he's going to Davos. That's why he's doing these things. That's why he's a Sirius XM show. That's right. Your governor is moonlighting as a Sirius XM host up in New York. Just this past weekend, it looks like he was up in New York to do an interview there as well. But what gets me about it'd be one thing if he's just doing this on his own private time, right? On his own private time, he's writing a book and doing a book tour. And on his own private time that no way affects us, the taxpayer, he's going to places like the Democrat National Convention, or he's going to Sirius XM. That wouldn't bother me as much. I mean, sure, we got issues going on here in Kentucky that, could use some attention. But what bothers me is that we subsidize it as the taxpayer. From the most recent auditor's report here, KSP, outside of just the salaries of his security detail, has spent an additional $183,000 providing out-of-state security for Bashir. This includes things like D.C. hotel stays, traffic tickets, $7,600 for a limousine in Germany, $5,192 for Switzerland airport services, $5,600 for vehicle rentals in Switzerland, stays at Hilton Head's 5-star resorts. Whether Bashir's charging the taxpayer when he's staying there or not, KSP is having to buy rooms and everything else when they're there. So $183,000 just last year, outside of salaries. So if you break that down, we're probably spending close to $500,000 providing security to Bashir out of state. And if you want to do that on your own time, you want to travel around, you want to do these things that are completely personal, then you should do it without taxpayer-funded security. You're not doing official business. There's no reason for anybody on the state dole to be there. But yet, that's not the case. There's always these people here. I mean, literally, KSP paid almost $700 for at the Democrat National Convention for meals. That was completely a political visit by him. And KSP is having to pay for meals there. So obviously, as he's doing this book tour, traveling all around, KSP is going to have to approve it. And frankly, that's why we need, the legislature has got to stop this. I am sick and tired of paying for this man's presidential campaign, aren't you? There's a bill in the legislature right now put forward by Representative T.J. Roberts, House Bill 86. This bill would require the governor to submit a written request to the state treasurer for approval to use any tax dollars on international travel. I say if at all the travel out of the state, if you're going to use taxpayer dollars in any way, KSP coverage, planes, flights, hotels, anything we're paying for at all, yeah, it should be approved by somebody else because this is getting out of hand. It's out of control. That's House Bill 86. Staying, though, on absolutely ridiculous things, there's been some movement in this illegal immigrant license scandal going on. We have a report here from a news station here, local news station here, on it. I want to play it for you real quick so you can go ahead and take a listen. Let's hear that.
Tonight, a major break in the driver's license fraud scandal, first exposed by WDRB, a money-driven scheme to sell licenses illegally to immigrants in Louisville. Now 5 people are charged in the case.
It hurts me that I'm talking about this.
Every time we spoke with Melissa Mormon, she talked about vindication.
I would just like to see some justice.
She was fired after blowing the whistle on potential fraud at the NIA Center driver's licensing branch.
I would like to clear my name.
Now a new release from federal prosecutors may do just that. 5 people are charged with fraud and money laundering in the scheme that Mormon brought public. Among those indicted, Ariel Matthews and Danita Wilson, the same people Mormon named in her wrongful termination lawsuit against the state. Prosecutors say the former clerks issued licenses without driver's tests and altered records in the state system to recognize licenses that didn't exist. Robert Correa, Lazaro Castello Rojas, and Raul Tellez Ojeda are accused of coordinating the process. They didn't work at the branch, but brought people in to jump the line, charging anywhere from $200 to $1,500 each. The state says it revoked about 2,000 licenses, meaning this scheme may have brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars. The indictment says Wilson and Matthews even paid colleagues to keep it quiet. Mormon said all along she wouldn't go along with it.
Melissa Mormon's been made a scapegoat, and she was just merely following orders.
WDRB Investigates began digging into the scheme a year ago. The Transportation Cabinet illegally withheld documents, and we fought the case in court and won.
They're going to produce something.
We learned it wasn't just Louisville. Revoked licenses went across Kentucky.
It's pretty shocking. Everybody was talking about it throughout the day in Frankfurt.
Now lawmakers are considering major changes, including shutting down the regional branches or shifting some of their services to county clerks and judge executive offices. One important clarification:
Undocumented workers would come into the office in groups.
Prosecutors say the licenses went to non-citizens who had legal status, not undocumented immigrants, as Mormon originally believed. Investigators say many didn't speak English, didn't know the rules, and thought they were paying extra fees for an expedited process. So far, none of the immigrants issued those licenses are being charged. And late this afternoon, the governor's office laid out steps it's taken to prevent future problems, including enhanced fraud training, cross-state tracking of issued credentials, the development of a reporting procedure with law enforcement, new supervisory requirements, and a weekly briefing between cabinet leadership and fraud section supervisors. You can read the governor's statement on the arrest and the case right now with this story on our website, WDRB.com.
That's an interesting term. Undocumented workers, but here legally. What? What are they saying? That's been in all the news reports that, they weren't here illegally, they're just undocumented workers. What does that even mean? If you're here legally, you're documented. You're not an undocumented immigrant. Because if you came in through a legal process, they have documents. What is going on? What is going on there? Just that part of the reporting alone. Like I said, I've seen that in several places. What is this new term? Undocumented workers, but not here illegally. That's like a contradiction in terms. That doesn't make sense. They're bending over backwards to try to say that, oh, look, they're not illegal immigrants. They're just, immigrants that we don't know are here. But illegal? Who's to say? Well, when we come back, we'll continue digging into this because I continue to have more questions about exactly what's going on here, who's getting charged, because there's a lot of things said in that report I think deserve digging into. If you want to join in the conversation, that's 502-571-0970. Once again, that's the Kentucky Voice text line, 502-571-0970.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you are back here on Kentucky's Voice. Sir Andrew Cooper here, covering, of course, this new indictments filed against some people over the illegal immigrant scandal. Getting these driver's licenses. You can go ahead and shoot a text. You want to tune in this final segment here coming up. We'll go over those texts. That's 502-571-0970. And so last segment, we learned that there's this new term for undocumented but here legally non-U.S. citizens, legally present but undocumented non-U.S. citizens, which is, yeah, okay, sure. Let's pretend that exists. But the individuals indicted here was Donita Wilson, Ariel Matthews, Raul Tellez Ojeda. That's a classic American name right there. Lazaro Alejandro Castello Rojas and Robert Danger Correa. Whoever let in a guy with the middle name Danger, a little too on the nose, don't you think? Robert Danger Correa. That's his actual middle name, Danger. Aren't you afraid of getting caught? Danger's my middle name. Well, he probably wouldn't have said it so cleanly. Anyways, point is so these 5 people get charged in this illegal immigrant scandal for charging fees ranging from $200 to $1,500 for expedited processing. Now, the charges allege that they use money to bribe other officials. So, where are those charges? They should be coming. I'll hold off judgment. But if like a year from now, these are the only 5 arrested, we know something else is going on because they already admitted they were bribing other people, and also the behavior of the Bashir administration in that WDRB had to sue them to release documents that they should have given to them anyways under open records law tells us that they're trying to hide something. And if they're unwilling to charge the other people who they've already admitted were receiving bribes, we know it's something wrong. The other thing they've said is that, well, you can't charge the people who got the illegal licenses because they just didn't know. They thought they were just paying for an expedited process. They were literally receiving driver's licenses without doing driver's tests. I'm sorry, but I don't care if you don't speak English. I don't care. That's, ignorance isn't a, what's the word I'm looking for? Ignorance isn't an excuse for breaking the law. You can't break a law. And then when you're stopped and said, hey, you got an illegal driver's license, we have to charge you for that. You say, well, English no bueno. And they're like, well, we can't arrest this guy. He doesn't understand English. That's not me claiming that. That's literally what the report said. That most of them didn't speak English, and they, for some reason, didn't know you had to get a driver's test in order to get a driver's license. I'm pretty positive that there's not a country on this planet other than some extreme third world countries where you can get a driver's license without taking a driver's test. And once again, your ignorance is not an excuse. The fact that you came to a country, probably illegally, but you came to a country that we all speak English. English is our official language of the country, and you don't understand it, doesn't give you a free pass to defraud our system and illegally obtain driver's licenses. You think when you're paying some random guy who doesn't even work for the government $1,500, you know that that is not the cost to get a license. So either these are some of the dumbest people in the world, these immigrants, in which case we should just deport them on that. Being that stupid, that should be a deportable offense. I'm just saying, if you're so dumb that you're paying $1,500 to a guy off the street for a driver's license and you think it's all on the up and up, yeah, get him out of here. Too stupid. But they're not that dumb. Nobody's that stupid. They know exactly what's going on, good English or not. They know what's going on, and they should be held accountable. So we'll see what happens. You can go ahead and text in 502-571-0970. I'll be responding to those there in the next segment. That's 502-571-0970. I wanted to touch on this right here because this is an intricate and interesting situation and problem. So here it is. House Bill 500, which it puts in place a cap here of, it says that it will have a devastating impact health plan members and their dependents. And House Bill 500, the General Assembly proposes a 5% cap on employer contribution to health insurance costs, which will create a drastic financial shortfall of $77 million in 2027 and 2028. Unfortunately, there are only two ways to make up the shortfall: increasing employee premiums or decreasing coverage. So here's just the facts of the situation. This is just something to understand, okay? So this is over the last 10 years. So since 2017, by year, over the last 10 years, here's how much employee premiums have increased to the state. This is the state, like they don't have like a health insurance company per se. They have their own health plan because they're such a big employer. But 2017 went up by 1%, 2018 1 to 3, 2020 3%, 2021 3%, 2022 3%, 2023 0%, 2024 0%, 2025 0%. While the state has increased their spending 1.5% in 2015, 2% 2016, 1% 2018, 3% 2021, 2022 3%, 2023 10%, 2024 16.5%. So the last 2 years, it went up 10% and 16.5% respectively, while the employee contributions haven't gone up at all. That's the cost of the taxpayers. And so the legislature is saying, look, the health plan right now is looking for a 25% increase over the biennium, over the next 2 budget years. They want to spend 25% more and not increase premiums at all. And a lot of this cost is coming from the fact over the last several years, the Beshear administration has just added in coverages that they're just throwing them in there that nobody approved, nobody voted for. The legislature didn't force them to do it. They just decided on their own to add in these coverages for people. For an example, one of these coverages that's costing near $1 million a year, according to a recent financial impact statement on a bill to address this, is transgender health care. State employees, their health plans are paying $1 million a year for transgender health care. Another thing that's been added in is GLP-1s. Those are extremely expensive. It was never approved by anybody to throw those in there as coverage, but they've been throwing in there and covering. So that's in defense of why the bill is quote unquote needed. Also, the Kentucky Employer Health Plan is carrying over a $100 million surplus from prior years. So they asked for more money, they got it, and then they didn't spend it. So they're sitting on $100 million while asking for a 24% increase. House Bill 500 comes in and says, look, we're not going to keep just increasing this like crazy. And if you want to involve more coverage, you want to cover more things like any health insurance plan for private people, you're going to have to charge the employees more. That is the viewpoint of why they're looking at it, saying, look, this is costing us hundreds of millions of dollars. Like literally what they're asking for is like $300-400 million more. And we can't do it. We don't have it. And this is why. And that's from the legislature standpoint. Now, from the citizen standpoint, from the employee standpoint, here's the one thing, is that, benefits that deal with government work is part of the reason why people take government work. And a lot of government jobs don't pay very well. I understand that. Whether it's teachers or government workers across the board, if they went and worked private sector, they'd probably make more money, but their benefits would be far less. So those benefits draw people in. The other problem they have, and this is what I really have an issue with, is when you have things like this auditor's report that just came out last week, pointing out $133 million in questionable spending, $180 million in spending unclassified, that they're just like, we don't know what we spent it on. You got millions going to Beshear donors and their companies, it's really hard to then turn around and say, but the quote unquote, the little guy, the state employee, they're the one who has to suffer. Now, if Beshear was managing his funds everywhere else and the money existed to go ahead and do this, they would go ahead and you probably wouldn't be seeing this conversation. But the Beshear administration has added in things while at the same time wasting money everywhere else. And the legislature is just like, we don't have it. Their rock and hard place is you're asking for too much money. We don't have it. Mixed with also, though, you're spending literally the amount of money you say you need, you're wasting elsewhere. And it's hard for us to just mandate those cuts because the amount of bills and laws we'd have to pass to put the guidelines in place to stop the spending that is questionable, that is out of control and ridiculous, but is not technically illegal because there hasn't been a specific bill wrote that says, you can't spend $300,000 on a COVID vaccine, vaccination campaign. That's one of the things found. Because there's not a law against that, and there's nothing that the amount of work the legislature would have to do to get this in place is going to take them years, and I don't know if they have a desire to do it because they think, well, we'll just fix this with a Republican governor. But that's the hard place there. Because, yeah, I understand your argument about it spending too much money, but at the same time, you literally have hundreds of millions being wasted other places that is not under control. I understand it may be small pots of 10 million here, 5 million there, 3 million there, 2 million there, but it adds up to a lot of money and you got to get that under control. And it's hard to tell the state employees you're going to get a little increase in your premiums or you're going to have less coverages while you have that kind of waste going on. And it's going to become a blame game between Beshear and the legislature, and that's what we're seeing. We'll be talking about that maybe a little bit more, but also respond to your texts if you want to get them in 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. We'll be dealing with that when we get back here in a few short minutes.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you are back here on Kentucky's Voice. Your host today, Andrew Cooper, responding to Kentucky Voice text line messages that going over what has come through today, what we've talked about today. If you want to join into that conversation, you can text 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. Starting off here, first message on The View. Governor Beshear said the golden rule is love your neighbor as yourself, which is actually the second greatest commandment, according to Jesus. The golden rule is actually do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. Yeah, he does confuse that sometimes, the golden rule and the rule of the Good Samaritan, but something he gets wrong and many people get wrong across the board is a misunderstanding of what those golden rules mean. For an example, the golden rule here, do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. What would I have others do unto me? That's the question. Treat others how you would like to be treated. Not how they would like to be treated, how you would like to be treated. So if you would like to be treated with fairness, then you treat others with fairness, or grace, you treat others with grace. If I don't want others to, trans my son, cut his genitalia off and give him chemical castration drugs and hormone therapy and turn my son into a girl, why would I want that done on to others? And if somebody was doing that to my son, I would want somebody to step in and stop it. If for some reason I wasn't there to stop it. So that, I think, is like this idea that the golden rule means whatever somebody wants to do, they can just do, and you're commanded by God to let them do it, is ignoring what the text of the golden rule actually says, in my opinion. What it says is treat others how you want to be treated. I want to be treated fairly. I don't want to be stolen from. I want to be treated with grace. But I also don't want my kids' genitalia chopped off. Call me crazy. So I don't want that for other kids either. I don't want my son to sin. So I don't want others to sin. That's how I want to be treated. So that's how I treat others. That's what I think people misunderstand, especially Beshear when he's talking about it. Just my opinion, I'm not a theologian per se, but just simple reading of the words and understanding them tells me that it isn't just whatever this person, it doesn't say treat people how they want to be treated. It says treat people how you would want to be treated, which is a difference in kind. Let's see here. Here's another one that says, conservative church leaders need to expose Andy's hypocrisy and not be afraid to do so. Like it or not, politics have always influenced our churches, and it's time for church leaders to step up. That's exactly right. I agree with you. If somebody's going to invoke your religious beliefs in order to excuse abominable and sinful actions, yeah, church leaders and people amongst the faith need to stand up and say, look, that isn't okay. You are being blasphemous. You are not following our faith. Do not do these things in my God's name. You're trying to pretend like we have the same God here in your faith, and we don't. My God's the true God. He is your God, whether you like it or not. But whatever God you're referencing, it ain't that God. It's some other God of the left or something. Some made-up God that says it's okay to, mutilate children. Clearly wrong. This is a joke about earlier. So it's been a running joke here on the show. My chyron at the bottom, if you're watching this on TV, has said Sir Andrew Cooper Ryder. This was a joke that we talked about in the break 5 years ago or so during COVID. I was bored at home one day and found a Groupon that I could pay like $50 or $40 or something. And I would buy a square foot of land in Scotland, but it was on a Scottish estate. Therefore, and then I get registered in the Book of Lords, and I became Sir Andrew Cooper Ryder, a Lord of Scotland. And I only had to pay like $40 for it. It's pretty great. And then I used it on email signatures until people got mad at me for it. I think they're just jealous, personally. Jealousy around the workplace. But anyways, But this person texted in saying, I am of Scottish heritage. If we buy enough Scottish land, can we claim it as part of the USA? Yeah, 100%. That's how it works, right? If U.S. citizens own like 51% of Scotland, I feel like that becomes ours. If we as a people come together and buy up all this land, yeah, we should get, and not only that, but it would come at a hefty price. I mean, at a square foot for $40, $50, it's like $1.5 million an acre is what they're getting. Like, $1.5 million-ish an acre. That's a pretty hefty price. So I feel like, yes, if we can own 51% of the land out there and it cost us $1.5 million an acre, I think we deserve to own the country. I think we deserve to take it. I think it deserves to be ours. I will be the William Wallace. I will paint my face. I will lead us to freedom in Scotland, to Sir Andrew Cooperrider. I got us covered. So there you go. There's a fun text there. Here's another one here. People, I bet, are still trying to get their unemployment checks from Bashir's COVID disaster. Yeah, I would say so, probably. That's interesting, too, is that the legislature got 50, 60 million they set aside for Bashir to redo our unemployment system. And I remember he hired somebody to do it, and then he fired him because the owners of the company were conservative donors to somebody. So he decided he didn't like them and fired. This was a story I remember. But I don't think they ever actually fixed the unemployment system. Let's see here. I don't remember the unemployment system rehaul for that 50 million getting rehauled, getting done. It was issued and then revoked. I think they're still sitting on it. Let's see here. We'll come back to it. I have to search that live. The other thing about unemployment system, by the way, little small thing here. This is a real story. You can check it out. The guy who was over unemployment during the Bashir administration. Okay, so in May 2024, they did issue the contract, but full rollout isn't projected till 2028 for the new unemployment software. 2028. So in 2020, I think the legislature issued the 50, 60 million. This one's 55.5 million is what they're giving them. They set aside $50, $60 million to fix the unemployment system. And it won't take but till 7 years later to fix it. That's the kind of leadership you get under Bashir, for sure. Anyways, putting that to the side. And then, of course, that system will be outdated in 10 years. So it'll take another 10 years then to make. It's just, by the time the system's implemented, it'll be outdated. That's how fast technology moves anyways. Absolutely ridiculous. Also, something to bring up. This is a real thing here. So the head of unemployment, and I was just thinking about this today, committed, unalived himself, I think is the term I have to use. So this is the controversy here. So he was the head of unemployment during COVID. He wanted, at one point, the legislature offered LRC staff to go work, a couple hundred extra staff to go work at the unemployment office. And they rejected it. Bashir didn't want it. But it came out in open records requests and other things that Bashir did want that the head of the unemployment did want that help. And he had all these, and this is at the same time, you had all these scandals around unemployment. You had people, accessing it improperly. You had Lieutenant Governor Coleman moving people to the front of the line. You had a lot of cronyism going on inside of it. And long story short, in 2022, this guy commits suicide in a parking lot. And his wife comes out and is like, he was not suicidal. And he actually gave me all these text messages and things to put out there in case something happened to him. And she starts releasing these text messages that had tons of controversy over what was going on in the unemployment office. A lot of corruption, a lot of issues going on. And literally the newspapers refused to report on that information because they couldn't, they just wouldn't report on that. They reported on the suicide. They reported on the wife releasing the messages, but that's it. It just died off. And I just think about that today because it's, a classic kind of like political people getting unalived, committing suicides themselves, supposedly in situations that leaves a lot of questions to be asked. And this was a real similar situation. And I was just thinking about, like, whatever happened to that investigation? Did anybody ever dig into it? It's funny how the media, the mainstream media, will just like touch on these issues and leave. A most recent one that I've seen, this is crazy. So the auditor puts out, hundreds of millions of dollars of questionable spending. And amongst this long list, literally they did a 15-minute presentation. They had probably several hundred individual expenditures they mentioned. And amongst that list was one $6,000 expenditure to Lexington Legends. And Bashir comes down and says, well, that's for the foster kids. The entire audit is, I don't have to answer any questions because this one $6,000 out of hundreds of millions of questions went ahead and spent that on foster kids. And so the headlines, if you go look now even, the headlines are about Ball Bashir trade jabs over foster kids ball game. No, they're not. Allison Ball called out hundreds of millions of spending. He responded and called out $6,000 out of that hundreds of millions and had a quote unquote good excuse for it. And that's all the media is reporting on. Here's another one. How does the government not have a complete up-to-date computing system? COVID vaccine, that's an oxymoron. Yeah, the government spends like a lot on IT. This was a part of what Ball actually was talking about when she was talking about some of the questionable spending. So every single department has its own IT group, like Oates and other offices of ITs. But despite that, in just 1 year, the state of Kentucky spent $34,307,475 on IT services. Despite the fact, oh no, that was just the Department for Community-Based Services, it looks like. Spent $34.3 million in IT services, despite the fact that they have their own staffed IT department. What is it that our internal IT is doing then? You see a lot of that in government. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on Kentucky's Voice. I've been your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you like what you're hearing, you want to check out the Andrew Cooperrider Show, you can go visit theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. Hit the Listen Now tab. You can see all the different places you can tune into the show. You can see links for social media. But anyways, until next week, I'll be seeing you. See you then.